The Yu-Gi-Oh anime has a lot of different decks with characters associated with them, but how many of those characters, decks, or teams had an impact on the real-life card game? Let's take a look, starting by Duel Monsters. You might be surprised to find out that Blue Eyes was actually meta at some point. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2016, the winner of that tournament was Hiyama Shunsuke, and he was playing a Blue Eyes deck. With the release of new support, notably the Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon, he was able to take the #1 spot, so Kaiba's precious Blue Eyes was able to shine at some point during the game's history. The deck with the new support was able to summon Blue Eyes consistently and easily, and with the synchro monster, Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, who acted sort of like a floodgate for decks that special summon 2 monsters at the same time, so most Pendulum decks. It's clear to see why this deck made it to the top. There's also the second top player that made it to the top, with a Blue Eyes deck. Unfortunately, there was no Dark Magician deck that made it to the top, so we couldn't have any Yugi vs Kaiba action going on. Moving on to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, we have a 2-for-1, Heroes. Jaden Yuki with his Elemental and Mask Heroes, and Aster Phoenix with his Destiny and Vision Heroes. These two characters and their teams always seem to get new support. At this point, I think there are over 200 hero cards, something like that, but it's no wonder because they are fan favorite characters. And at the WCQ National Championship in Greece 2022, Stefanos Fostieris made first place with a hero deck, and it makes a lot of different kinds of hero cards. The Elemental Heroes, Vision Heroes, Destiny Heroes, the Masked Heroes, and the Extra Heroes. What I especially like about this deck is how it still uses a lot of the older cards, such as Stratos, Malicious, Absolute Zero, and Great Tornado. With how much support the hero cards get, I wouldn't be surprised if, in the future, they potentially become a meta-relevant deck for a second time. Now to Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. A lot of people know this, but the 5Ds era is home to one of the best decks ever created, the Infinity deck, and this deck in the anime is used by Kiryu Kyosuke. When they first appeared, it was just a part of his strategy since his winning condition was to summon the Earthbound Immortal, who has the effect to be able to attack directly while being unaffected by attacks himself. After the Dark Signer arc, it became his main strategy. Now what was the archetype strategy? In the anime it was called the Handless Combo, but basically the Infinities have effects when you have no cards in your hand. But one of the things that made this deck very good was the fact that most cards did not have a restriction on their once per turn, meaning that you could use their effects as much as you wanted to. Cards like Infernity Archfiend and Infernity Necromancer were very abusable, and their combos were very long, especially because of Infernity Launcher, their continuous spell card, which you could send to the graveyard to special summon 2 Infernity monsters from your graveyard. And like I said, their monsters have no restrictions, so it was very easy to just continue comboing off with those monsters that you brought back. And of course, when something is very abusable, then they get hit by the ban list. Moving on to Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, we also have a 2-for-1, the Pepe deck. In one of my other videos, I have mentioned this deck since it is one of the few tier 0 decks in the game's history. And this deck was so terrifyingly powerful that they had to put an emergency ban list on them. Now the deck uses 2 archetypes used by 2 different characters who have similar teams, Performa Pals by Yuya Sakaki and the Perform Mages used by Dennis Macfield. It's very funny to me that these monsters who have a circus team were so powerful. It's very silly. This just screams Yu-Gi-Oh! To be honest to me. But back then, Pendulum monsters were very powerful, with little to no restrictions on their Pendulum summons. When Pendulum monster used to be on the extra deck, they could just be summoned right out to the monster field. There were no extra monster zone, so you could easily Pendulum summon 5 monsters each turn and then use them for other extra deck moves like Exceed summons or Synchro summons. 2016 was very wild for Yu-Gi-Oh! You also had to mix in some powerful Pendulum related cards such as Wavering Eyes and Draco Slayer cards. It's pretty ironic how the teams of those characters was to entertain, but they ended up being a scary force together, which is actually kind of fitting with Yuya's character if you have watched the anime. The last deck used by a character that I'll talk about is the Salamangreat deck from Soulburner in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns anime. To be honest, Reigns has a lot of character decks that are very good in real life, but let's talk about Salamangreat for now. Salamangreat is an archetype of Fire Cyberse monsters. They have a lot of graveyard effects, so they can special summon themselves and then go for a link summon. They have this unique gimmick where they can link summon with a link monster with the same name. This gimmick in the anime was called Reincarnation Link Summon. Around 2019, the top decks were Thunder Dragons, Orcus, Sky Strikers, and Salamangreats. These were the top 4 decks at the time, so the format was named the TOS format, which is just the first layer of each archetype if you haven't noticed. But yeah, Salamangreats are just a good deck all around, and it's really fitting with the character Soulburner, who's a very passionate and fiery duelist. And he honestly has a lot of good moments in the anime. In another universe, he's the protagonist of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Friends anime. So these were the 7 characters decks who had an impact on the game's history. If you feel like I've missed something or omitted information on the characters or decks, feel free to put it in the comments down below. Furthermore, I'll probably make another video like this one, so if you know about one character specifically that had an impact on the real life card game, feel free to put it in the comments. I especially had a pretty hard time finding someone in the Zexal era, to be honest, so I could definitely use your help. If you liked the video, put a like, subscribe, put the bell notification and all that good stuff. I'll see you guys in the next one.